Today I'm in Mark chapter 9, and in Mark 9, in verse 31, Jesus and his disciples have come to Capernaum. This is after the transfiguration, after they were up around Caesarea Philippi, and Peter made the great confession of faith where Jesus teaches them the first time really plainly that he was going to Jerusalem, that he was going to suffer many things, he would be killed, and on the third day raised from the dead. And in verse 31, Mark tells us that Jesus teaches them a second time, that he says, the Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of men. They will kill him, and after 3 days, he will rise. And then Mark says something that I find a little humorous. Says in verse 32, but they, being the disciples, they did not understand what he meant and were afraid to ask him about it. One of the things that just kind of makes me a little laugh at that. If you remember, after Peter makes the first great confession and Jesus teaches for the first time that he was going to die, Peter rebukes him and says, never. Jesus takes Peter aside and rebukes him and says, get behind me, Satan. You don't have the things of God at heart, but the things of man. And so the disciples heard this, and they've witnessed it, they've seen it. And so now when Jesus teaches a second time, it's not that they had come to this place of, oh, I really get what's going on here. I understand. They don't understand, but hey, I'm not going to say anything. So what happens when you ask, when you try to challenge that? So, another thing that happens here in Capernaum is Jesus knows that the disciples were arguing on their way to Capernaum while they were on the road, and he asked them what they were arguing about, and they kept quiet. No one would answer the question because they were arguing about who was the greatest among them. The disciples argued about that quite often. Who is the greatest? Who is the most important? And Jesus says to them, knowing what they had been arguing about, he says this, anyone who wants to be first must be the very last and the servant of all. Jesus has lived this among them. He has taught it. They argue and they fight about who has position, who has the power, who has the importance, who is the strongest of the disciples. And Jesus reminds them, if you want to be the greatest, you must be the least. If you want to be first, you must be last and the servant of all. I think sometimes we can look at these disciples and point out their flaws, forgetting that often we have the same ones. We get wrapped up in who's in control, who gets to call the shots, who's the most important, what's our pecking order. Jesus says real plainly, if you want to be first, you must be last. You must be a servant of all. I just want to encourage you today to spend some time looking at yourself. Are you being a servant? Are you serving those around you? Are you putting them first? I think Jesus would say, quit worrying about who's first. I am. But he came to serve. Well, I ask you to just pray and let the Holy Spirit guide you. And I hope you have a great day.